You know, there was a time where Tim Burton could do no wrong. And when the original Beetlejuice came out, he was in the middle of one heck of a streak of films. From Pee Wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands. He was just on fire. And there had been rumors about another Beetlejuice movie going back like 15 years about the possibility of them doing one. And it actually came out. When the trailer came out earlier this year, for a while I was thinking, hey, this is, I'll believe it when I see it. You know what I mean? It's just a story that you don't think would ever happen. It felt like we were so far away from getting another Beetlejuice. Well, 2024 has brought us Beetlejuice Beetlejuice as Tim Burton returns to the director's chair. And I was a little bit skeptical because, Tim Burton's recent years have not really been the best. His movies have not been anywhere near in a class where they were before. His visual style has always been the most interesting thing about his films, especially, even in the recent era where that kind of stuck around. Still, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice had some big shoes to fill. Michael Keaton is once again back to reprise his role as the legendary bioexorcist, but this time he's got problems because, as we find out from his backstory, there's a character from his past that has come back for revenge. This, of course, would lead Beetlejuice to once again have to deal with the living in the name of Winona Ryder's Lydia Deetz. This film being 30 or so years after the first one, Lydia is now older, she's got a new career, and she has a daughter. And this story focuses on the family of Lydia, not just her daughter, played by Jenna Ortega, but also her mother, Catherine O'Hara, once again returns to reprise that role. Tim Burton himself said in an interview that he wanted to examine what Lydia would be up to after all these years and how she would deal with being a mother and dealing with her own teenage daughter who's got her own problems, especially a teenage daughter who has some doubts about her skills. Now, the question, of course, that I had and many of you have, of course, is was it a good movie? Did it live up to the original? So, the original, I rewatched it a few days ago, and I loved it even more. And it just, I really love that film. Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, who are surprisingly absent from this film, it is somewhat explained why, but they're not in this story. It's not their story. It's about Lydia and Beetlejuice. But the thing was, I wasn't going into this expecting it to be as good as the original. I was expecting it to be at least a fun movie, and seeing Michael Keaton in the makeup once again is what I wanted. And really, he carries this film. He really, really does. Every scene he's in, it just pops out. He still has that 80s charm. Maybe he's not as quick as he used to be, but Michael Keaton really puts in a lot into this performance. He got right back into the character, and you have to remember, it has legitimately been over 3 decades. I mean, it's a long time for a guy like Michael Keaton, who's played so many different characters in his life, to go back to one that was relatively early in his career, I would say. And he's still got the comedic timing down pat. Now, joining the cast is Monica Bellucci and Willem Dafoe. Interestingly enough, Willem Dafoe, another Spider-Man villain, teaming up with Michael Keaton, another Spider-Man villain in this film. Willem Dafoe is awesome in this movie because he plays this like sort of former actor that became a detective, and he gets to basically be over the top while also making fun of other actors. But Michael Keaton really does steal the show. Winona Ryder brings a tremendous amount of heart, like her eyes, like she has these eyes, man, that are just very, very alluring. And she really makes Lydia Deetz even more likable than she was in the original. She's joined now by Justin Theroux, who plays her fiance. And he's a character that from the very beginning seems like might not be who you think he is. And there's a lot of that in this film, because in the film, Lydia's daughter ends up getting caught up in some of the similar things that Lydia was caught up in the first film. And so Lydia has to face her fear and revisit Beetlejuice and revisit the home in that town once again. So it's, even though Tim Burton, I feel, is not the filmmaker he used to be, he still brings a visual flair to the movie. He still brings, lots of nice quality. This movie might be the best one he's done in years. Is it as good as the first one? I don't think so, and not even close, I would say. But is it fun? Yes. I had a really good time with this movie, and it wasn't just because of Michael Keaton being over the top. It was also because they explore the world, like the world they built, the afterlife, and you know these kooky characters with these funny looking faces, and lots of, there's a lot of practical effects with a little bit of like animation in there as well. There was one scene in particular that explains what happened to a previous character who's dead, and it's done in flashback in an animated style because the actor's dead. And that's a really, really clever thing that they did. Something I wasn't really expecting. Tim Burton really does kind of experiment here with not just making a regular film. There's another segment in the movie where Beetlejuice explains something going on in the past, like explaining to the audience what happened, and it's in black and white like a silent film. So obviously Tim Burton made Ed Wood back in 1994, so the guy does have this reverence for black and white movies, cheesy movies, and we see that with Beetlejuice. So I think the spirit of the first movie is still here. There's no question that Burton grew up loving these kinds of movies. They definitely inspired him, and Beetlejuice had a lot of that flavor in it, and this one follows suit. Now, I was hearing some people say that Monica Bellucci's character was a little bit underdeveloped, and I have to somewhat disagree, only because I think that the character, for what she was, you kind of got all the development you really wanted out of her. There wasn't much else to say, and the movie does not spend a lot of time sort of trying to explain a lot of the things happening. Now, sometimes that could be a detriment, because you don't want to watch a movie where things happen and you're just wondering, okay, that doesn't make any logical sense. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I mean is, we have to accept this world being this sort of pseudo reality where the afterlife might borrow elements from what we've been grown up to believe the afterlife is, depending on what you believe in your personal faith, as well as sort of understanding that sort of this comedic, very kooky version of what the afterlife probably is like. I mean, there's references to Soul Train. There's, we saw in the first film the check-in station when you die, like we revisit that area again. There's just a lot of, a lot more world building. However, after seeing this movie, okay, I was satisfied. I do want to say, this film did satisfy me. I was happy. I enjoyed it. Not as good as the first one at all, but it was great to revisit these characters and revisit this world, and it was great to really see the character arc of Lydia, and it was great to see Michael Keaton. I mean, we got to see Michael Keaton just last year wear the cape and cowl again as Batman. Now he's playing another iconic character, Beetlejuice, once again. And the thing that's interesting is, obviously Michael Keaton's gotten a lot older since then, but because he's wearing the Beetlejuice makeup, it hides it very, very well. You know what I mean? Like, he's got the dark eyes around, the dark, makeup around his eyes or whatever. That in and of itself is, it helps hide and mask that he's aged. And he's just him. He's Beetlejuice. Like, he's right back into the character. And that made me feel comfortable. It put a smile on my face. I will say I'm not sure where else they can take the franchise from here. This could just be one sequel and that's it. It could just be we got this done. It's finished. Tim Burton's back in familiar territory. Beetlejuice fans are going to get their movie, but maybe they will do a third one. I don't know. I will tell you that humor is very subjective, and the jokes in this movie, lots of sight gags and over-the-top gags. And, I laughed a couple times, not as much as I did the first movie. But some people might not think it's funny. I mean, it just kind of depends on what your sense of humor is. When I reviewed Barbie, I talked about how I understood the jokes, but I didn't think it was all that funny. This movie, I laughed a little bit more, but it wasn't so much that I was howling with laughter. You know what I mean? The first movie had me howling a couple times. This one, though, I did have a smile on my face, and it's because we're back in this world with these characters, and they did some really clever things in this movie that I was not expecting with some of the legacy characters. And visually, it's a treat. It's a treat visually. So I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I think fans are going to like it. If you're not really into Beetlejuice, if you didn't like the first one, it's probably not worth seeing, to be honest with you. You kind of have to appreciate this world to really, really appreciate this movie. However, if you are a fan, I mean, you're going to go see it anyways, but I recommend seeing the first one if you haven't. And if you like it, you might as well go see the second one because it is a fun time. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Wasn't expecting it to rock my world, but it definitely was fun. And those are my thoughts, man. I don't know if I'm going to come back with a spoiler review, but non-spoiler, that's what I got for you today. Anyways, take care. What did you think in the comments down below? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.